The Venezuelan people remember the legacy left by the maximum leader of the Venezuelan and Bolivarian Revolution, Hugo Rafael Chavez Frias, and commemorating the 69th anniversary of his birth. The President, Vladimir Putin, and African heads of state signed the final declaration while closing the Russia-Africa summit in St. Petersburg. And the General Abdurrahman Tishani, head of the Niger's coup-born leadership, addressed the nation as the president of the National Council, while the international community condemns the coup and demands respect for democracy. Hello from the headquarters of TeleSUR English in Havana, Cuba. This is From the South. I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada, and these are the news. Since early Friday morning, July 28th, the Venezuelan people remember the legacy left by the maximum leader of the Venezuelan Revolution, Hugo Rafael Chavez Frias, and commemorating the 69th anniversary of his birth. From the mountain barracks, Venezuelans celebrate the birthday of Hugo Chavez, and the revolutionaries of the world unite to remember the legacy of the leader with a humanist and solidary thanks, who filled people with dignity and patriotism. Chavez headed a social process that allowed him to leave a legacy and renew Simón Bolívar's thought, becoming a symbol of the people that has lasted beyond his own life for his libertarian ideas and the integration of the peoples. Leaders and revolutionaries of the world consider him a friend and a brother for the social struggles to which he dedicated his life, and today they pay tribute to his life and work.
Your people today pay homage to you in every corner of Venezuela. They will pay homage to you, and the satisfaction after what has happened is that today Hugo Chavez continues to be Hugo Chavez in the heart of the people of Venezuela.
On Thursday, the president of Venezuela, Nicolás Maduro Moros, received the Secretary General of the Forum of Gas Exporting Countries, Mohamed Hamel. The meeting, held in the Miraflores Palace, was also attended by the Venezuelan Ministers of Petroleum, Pedro Rafael Tellechea, and of Foreign Affairs, Iván Gil. There, they highlighted the motivations to strengthen institutional alliances and the Bolivarian nation's open-door policy to establish respectful and sovereign cooperation relations. Earlier, Mohamed Hamel, delegates of the Forum and the representative of Latin American Energy Organization, held a meeting with the Vice President Delcy Rodriguez. In other topics, the Ayotzinapa case continues to be a state issue for the Mexican government, according to Alejandro Encinas, the president of the Truth Commission. The government approves the sixth report of the interdisciplinary group of experts that has issued a series of recommendations related to aspects such as exhaustive investigation, unification, and search, which will be addressed by the Special Investigation and Litigation Unit of the Ayotzinapa case. The group joined as a collaborating party to the investigation. Among the achievements of the body's investigative work are the arrest of the former Attorney General Jesus Murillo Caram and the arrest of military personnel involved in the Ayotzinapa case. Guatemala's Supreme Electoral Court warns that it again sees general elections at risk after learning that the Public Prosecutor's Office is initiating proceedings against the system's data entry clerks. The Special Prosecutor's Office Against Impunity has requested the highest electoral body to provide them with the names of the data entry clerks hired for the electoral process 2023. The prosecutor, Leonor Morales Lasso, has established a term of 5 days for the data to be submitted, which she said will facilitate the proceedings and strengthen the process for the corruption case of the SID movement. After the announcement, civil society organizations are gathered in resistance fronts in defense of the process. In Peru on Friday, people continued to march against the government of President-appointed Dina Boluarte. There were many calls to protest amid national holiday celebrations. Social organizations and the trade unions will gather this July 28th and on the 29th at the May 2nd Square in the country's capital, Lima. As in the previous marches, the organizers of the new day of protests said they will demand the resignation of President Boluarte and the shutdown of the Congress on this day that President Boluarte is scheduled to address the country with the State of the Nation in her first year of office. Let's move on to Brazil. There, records provided through the Access to Information Act revealed the deaths of 835 indigenous in 2022. The report on violence against indigenous peoples in Brazil during 2022, published by the Indigenous Missionary Council, shows that during Jair Bolsonaro's presidency, 795 cases of homicides against indigenous people were registered throughout the country. According to the text, the states of Roraima and Amazonas, areas of Yanomami indigenous land, carry the gruesome of the sinisters, accounting for 208 and 163 murders respectively. In third place is Mato Grosso do Sul with 146 reports. These three federative units accounted for 65% of all the violent deaths. And the former president, or the U.S. President Donald Trump, is facing new allegations involving him and his aides asking a staffer to erase images from cameras at his Florida estate in an effort to obstruct investigations into the classified documents. The indictments were made on Thursday in a grand jury update that adds new charges against Trump and another defendant to the case. Associated Press reported Eric Tucker said the additional charges of obstruction and intentional withholding of national defense information tipped the scales of justice toward new indictments. The charges show not only the presence of classified documents, but a defendant's efforts to conceal those documents from investigators. A Trump spokesperson dismissed the new charges as nothing more than an ongoing desperate and agitated attempt by the Biden administration, supposedly, to harass the President Trump and those who surround him and influence the 2024 presidential race. And now let's take a short break. But remember, you can join us on TikTok at TeleSUR English, where you will find the news in different formats, news updates, and more. Other stories coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back. President Vladimir Putin stressed on Friday during the closing plenary of the Russia-Africa summit that the African continent is becoming a new center of power that the international community must take into account. The Russian head of state stressed that Africa's political and economic role on the international stage has been growing exponentially. The president assured that the world will have to face this reality in an objective manner. Putin stressed that the African Peace Initiative on Ukraine is an indicator of a greater role for the continent. He also said that Africa is becoming a new center of power. After a two-day debate, the mandatories signed the final declaration of the event. We stay in the topic. At the closing session of the Russia-Africa Forum on Friday, Putin said the situation in the African continent remains unstable, and he blamed it on what he called the heavy legacy of the colonial era.
We also have to admit that the situation in many regions of Africa remains unstable. Interethnic and ethnic conflicts have not been resolved. Acute political and socio-economic crisis persists. This, of course, is a heavy legacy of the colonial era, of the divide and conquer course, which was carried out in Africa by the Western metropolis.
And he also noted that Moscow stands ready to bolster defense ties with African countries by helping train their military and expanding supplies of military equipment, some of them on a known-cost basis.
Russia also offers its assistance in confronting these threats, and we are interested in the closest cooperation between law enforcement structures and special service of the Russian Federation and African countries. We are determined to continue training military personnel and law enforcement officers of African countries in Russian specialized educational institutions.
On Friday, African presidents called on Ukraine and Russia to de-escalate their conflict in order to resolve the conflict in Ukraine, taking into account the African Initiative, which also calls for the renewal of an agreement on the export of Ukrainian grain.
I call earnestly for an end to the Russia-Ukraine conflict. African wisdom teaches that the grouse always bears the brunt of a rivalry or a duel between elephants. Such is the case of what being a part of the dietary habits of most African countries, which today face shortage and which have a real impact on the daily lives of their populations. The African initiative should neither be overlooked nor underestimated for an adequate solution of the Russian-Ukraine conflict. We wish, Mr. President, for the escalation of the Russian-Ukraine conflict to help it calm down and restore free trade of grain and fertilizers. That's been my speech since the first day of the Russian-Ukraine conflict, because Africa produces grain. We produce all kinds of grain, but no fertilizers. How are we going to do this? Therefore, all constraints regarding trade of grain and fertilizers must be lifted.
Now we move on to other topics. On Friday morning, Russia's defense ministry has confirmed that it foiled a new Ukrainian drone attack attempt on its capital, Moscow. The incident, as reported, is said to have occurred on Thursday night. The aircraft was heading for facilities in the capital's province when it was destroyed by air defense assets. The mayor of the capital, Sergei Sobyanin, also referred to the new aggression, confirming that there was no damage of any kind, neither human nor material. In recent weeks, Russian forces have repelled several Ukrainian drones in Moscow and Crimea. And on Friday, China stated that its economic ties with Russia are not biased by third parties and free of interference in response to a U.S. intelligence report saying that China is giving an economic lifeline to Russia.
Always conducted normal economic and trade cooperation with all countries around the world, including Russia, on the basis of equality and mutual benefit. We have consistently opposed unilateral sanctions and long-arm jurisdictions that are not based on international law or approved by the UN Security Council. China-Russia cooperation is neither at the third parties nor subject to interference and coercion from third parties.
The Chinese President Xi Jinping on Friday met with leaders from Guyana, Georgia, Mauritania, and Burundi on the sidelines of the World University Games in the southwestern Chinese city of Chengdu. In this meeting with Guyanese President Irfan Ali, Xi said China and Guyana should build a more united community with a shared future. Xi told Georgian Prime Minister Irakli Garibashvili that China and Georgia should work for a better development of both countries, as well as to contribute positive energy to human civilization. In his meeting with Mauritanian President Mohamed Ould Cheikh Shazouani, Xi urged China and Mauritania to jointly safeguard shared interests, international fairness and justice. Xi also expressed China's willingness to achieve mutual benefit and common development with Burundi at a higher level when meeting with his Burundian counterpart. The world leaders and officials are in Chengdu to attend the opening ceremony of the World University Games on Friday. We have a second short break coming up, but before we invite you to visit our YouTube channel at TeleSUR English. There you will be able to rewatch our interviews, the top stories, the special broadcastings and more. Hit the subscribe button and activate the notification bell to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. A final short break, don't go away. Welcome back. Niger's interior minister had banned all the public demonstrations following a coup d'etat carried out by a group of military officers who now have the support of the army. The ministerial office recalls that the state maintains a monopoly on violence and reproaches alleged riots committed by people demonstrating support for those holding the president, Mohamed Bazoum. It stated that it has instructed the police forces and other security groups, of whom it does not give details, to arrest those who carry out riots, acts of vandalism, or public demonstrations of any nature. The international community ratifies that it only recognizes Bazoum as the president. And amid worldwide claims in favor of the democracy in Niger, coup leader General Abdurrahman Tchani spoke on national television and read a statement after the ouster of the president-elect Mohamed Bazoum.
On Wednesday, July 26, 2023, security forces gathered within the National Council for the Safeguarding of the Homeland put an end to the regime of the Seventh Republic. The action of the National Council for the Safeguarding of the Homeland is motivated by the sole desire to preserve our beloved homeland, on the one hand in the face of the continuous deterioration of the security situation of our country, and this without the foreign authorities letting us glimpse a real solution to the crisis, poor economy and social governance.
The Kenyan President William Ruto condemns the latest coup in Niger that ousted elected leader Mohamed Bazoum in the insurgent-stricken region.
Joins the rest of the world to condemn in the strongest terms this unconstitutional act that subverts democracy through a coup d'etat and calls for the immediate release of President Mohamed Bazoum, who is reportedly seized by members of the Presidential Guard.
And the non-governmental organization Action Against Hunger announced on Thursday the temporary suspension of some of its activities in Niger. In a statement, the organization assured that the Action Against Hunger teams are stable and safe in Niger. It also said that it is monitoring the situation with the aim of enabling them to resume their activities as soon as possible. The measures came after the military detained the country's president, Mohamed Bazoum, and decreed an overnight curfew the same day, including the closure of air and land borders. In the meantime, the international community continues to demand the release of President Bazoum. Let's move on to other topics. On Friday in the Philippines, officials said at least 39 people have died following the impact of Typhoon Doksuri. Officials from the National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council reported that the natural phenomenon reached the coast, causing rains, floods, and landslides. Official data shows that Typhoon Doksuri has affected more than 500,000 people across the Southeast Asian country. Over 29,000 displaced people are still in 479 temporary shelters. Doksuri, the fifth cyclone to batter the Philippines in 2023, has dumped rains for days, triggering flash floods and landslides. Many areas of the main Luzon island are still inundated. And now let's talk about culture and religion. On Friday, Iranians take part in the morning rituals and prepare meals in the capital Tehran as they mark the Shid festival of Ashura. This event is a 10-day period commemorating the 7th century killing of Prophet Muhammad's grandson, Ayman Hussein. Millions of Shid Muslims in Iran, Afghanistan, Pakistan, and other parts of the world commemorated Ashura on Friday. Shiites, who accounts for more than 10% of the world's 1.8 billion Muslims, regard Hussein as the rightful successor to Muhammad. His death at the Battle of Karbala, south of Baghdad, at the hands of the Sunnis, opened a deep rift in Islam, and he continues to play a key role in shaping Shia identity. And like this, we have come to the end of this news brief. But remember, you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also, if you feel so inclined, please join us on social media for all the latest news. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.